A reveal removes a strip of material from the wall. And if we wanted to add a reveal to a wall type, what we can do is select on the wall type that we want to add that reveal to. So let's select on the bottom wall. So on the bottom right-hand side wall, click on that wall, then come up to Edit Type. Now, if for some reason your preview window is not open over on the left-hand side, just make sure to select on the preview button, then open up the section view. Where we want to remove material will be up toward the top of the wall. So that's going to be editing the structure of the wall. So find Structure, then select on the Edit button. Now we need to add a reveal. So select on the Reveals button, and we now need to add a profile shape. So click on Add to add a profile shape. Now the profile shape is just a two-dimensional shape, but it will be extruded along the length of the entire wall. When it gets extruded along the length of the wall, it'll actually remove any material that it hits. Come up here to Profile where it says Default, and we can see that we have a variety of different profile shapes that we could use. And if there's a different profile shape that you want to use, you could always come down to Load Profile and then find that two-dimensional profile shape that you want to use in your project, and then load it into the project. Once you do, it'll show up on the pull-down list. For this project, though, I do want to leave it as default. I know that the default shape is just a rectangular shape, and that'll work well for this project. Distance, that's how high off of either the base or the top of the wall that profile shape will be placed. Let's select top because I want this distance to be off of the top of the wall. For a distance, I'll use -6 inches. Now the reason why I'm choosing negative is that negative will move the profile shape down. If I did a +6 inches, it would move the profile shape up, which would be actually above the top of the wall. You can choose which side of the wall that this profile shape needs to be on. Let's choose the interior side, and then come down here to Apply just to see what that shape looks like. Right now we can see that in blue over here underneath the preview that that's the profile shape. Well, right now it's really just removing the entire top of the wall, and I don't want that. So let's choose an offset value to move this shape over toward the right. I'm going to choose a negative number like -2 inches and just see what it does. Click on Apply. See how it's now moved it over? But really, it hasn't moved that shape over quite enough for it to not go over the entire top of the wall. So I'll do -4.5 inches, then click on Apply. That's probably going to be okay. I'll click on OK to that. Click here, and now let's just zoom in to see what it is that we have here at the top of the wall. Now I can adjust it over another 1/2 inch, whatever it would take to actually get out of the structural part of the wall. But for demonstration purposes, I'll leave it just as it is. Come down here and select on OK. Click on OK again. And now you'll see that both of these walls, which are the same type of wall, now have that profile shape associated with it. See how we have the material cut out of the wall in those locations? One other thing that you can do is that if you click on the wall until the wall turns blue, you'll see a blue dot at the end of one profile shape. If you zoom to the other end by just spinning the wheel of your mouse, you'll see that there's a dot on the other end. Well, one of the things that you can do is click on those dots and you can pull those back, which means you can then control the overall size or locations of those profile shapes just by selecting on the dots. The same thing is true down at the bottom of the wall. Here we have what's called a sweep, and it was created the same way as the reveal up on top. If we click on one of the walls, you notice how we have a dot. We can either pull that sweep out or pull that sweep back in order to have that baseboard at the base of the wall be in whichever location that we need it to be. To manually place a wall sweep on the surface of the wall, we first need to go to a view where we can actually see that wall. May that be a section view, a 3D view, or an elevation view. And what I like to do is start to place some wall sweeps just on the interior of this room. So to accomplish that, let's go into a plane view by double-clicking on Level 1 Floor Plans. Next, zoom into the room. And now let's create just an elevation mark. Now, elevations are views, so we need to come underneath View, then select on Elevation. I'm going to go over here to our properties, and I'm going to choose an interior elevation mark, and then click here inside of the space. I'll hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard to get out of the command, then select on the circular shape. What I want to do now is just create elevations of each one of our walls. So I just put a check mark next to each one of the walls. We click outside the view here, and if we look underneath the project browser now, we now have elevations, interior elevations, and each one of these is a new interior elevation. I'm going to place some wall sweeps along this back wall, which is elevation 1-B. So I'll double click on the 1-B, and this is the wall that we were looking at a minute ago. Now to place that wall sweep, come up here to the Architecture tab, select on Wall, and then select Wall Sweep. Now that wall sweep command is only going to be available in views where you're either in an elevation, a section, or 3D view. You will not be able to place that wall sweep inside of a plane view. Now there's two different directions that a wall sweep can go. It can either go horizontally or it can go vertically. If horizontal is chosen, you'll notice how it's going from side to side. If vertical is chosen, up and down. Now you could just use the default wall sweep if that's what works for you, or you could load in different profile shapes, which would allow you to have custom looking wall sweeps. Underneath properties, right now we have cornice, and that's the only one that's available underneath our type selector list. So let's select on Edit Type and create our own wall sweep. Let's make a duplicate. And just for ease of typing, I'm going to type in sweep. So we now have a new wall sweep that's named sweep. But ideally, you would give it a name that would make sense for what it is that you're trying to create. Next, we can see that underneath construction, there's an option here for profile. That will be the profile shape of the sweep. If we click where it has default, there's currently already a variety of different profile shapes that we could use. Unfortunately, none of these are really quite the shape or size that I want them to be. So let's choose a different profile shape. To accomplish that, we'll need to get out of this Type Properties dialog box by clicking on OK. Now we need to load in a new profile shape or insert in a new profile shape. Because we're inserting in a new profile shape, we go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, and then we need to load family. Right now we can see that load family is grayed out, and the reason is that we're still inside of that sweep command. So we'll need to hit the Escape key a couple times on the keyboard to get out of the sweep command. Now load family is available to us. Click on Load Family, go to your Revit families, find your profile shapes, double-click to open up your Profiles folder. Then you can go into any of these folders and then load one of these shapes in. And really, no matter what shape it is that you pick, that will be the shape that gets extruded along the entire distance of your wall. Now you could either do finished carpentry or wall, but I'm personally going to go into framing and choose wood and dimensional lumber profile and click on open. With the profile that I chose, There's a variety of different sizes associated with it. I'm going to choose one of the smaller sizes and go with a 2x6 board. Click on OK. Now, just because we've loaded that profile shape into the project does not mean that it's immediately available to be drawing a wall sweep. We now need to assign it to that sweep that we create. So come up here to the Architecture tab, go to Wall, select on Wall Sweep. Go to Edit Type. On the drop-down menu for Type, choose Sweep. For the profile, click on Default, click on the lower down arrow so you get your menu, and then pick the dimensional lumber profile off of the list. Once that's been accomplished, we can either click OK and then start to draw in where we want our wall sweep to be, or we can change the material of that wall sweep. And I think that that's what I'll do. Click in by category, then select on the button toward the right-hand side. Now there's a wide variety of materials that we could use, from chipboard to laminate, different kinds of wood. Pretty much you can pick whatever material that you'd like to pick off of this list. Personally, I'm going to pick on oak flooring just because I think it's going to make for an interesting looking material on the wall. I'll click on OK, click on OK again. And now you'll notice that as I move from side to side, we have a wall sweep getting ready to be applied to the wall because the vertical has been selected. If I choose horizontal, it's now going from left to right on the wall. Let's just place the board right about here. Click once. If you can't see the wall sweep, just hit the Escape key on the keyboard and then you'll be able to see the wall sweep at this time. Let's do this a few more times. Come up here to Wall, choose Wall Sweep, come down, place another one right about there. Wall, Wall Sweep. This time let's do a vertical. Notice how we can have them cross over one another. Also, once one is placed, we can even use the copy command or the array command in order to copy that across the wall. So I'm just selecting on the wall sweep that I just placed, coming up to copy, clicking a base point, moving over, and then clicking again. And now we can see that we have that copy on the wall. Now, unfortunately, where these sweeps are crossing over one another, they are overlapping, and it looks like that they're overlapping. So to clean those wall sweeps up, we can click on the wall sweeps, come up here to Join, then click, click, and then just start clicking all the way around each of these sweeps, and they will clean up at their intersection points. So by manually placing the wall sweeps, you can place them anywhere that you need and be able to create any kind of detail that you need along your walls. One other thing that you can do though, and that is if you select on the individual sweeps, you'll see that you have these dots. If you have the dot, you can pull the dot back, or you can move the dot out. Based off of whether you pull it back or pull it sort of forward, it'll either lengthen or shorten those individual wall sweeps, which means you can always edit them later. Also, by selecting on the wall sweep, you'll get a dimension. If you type in what dimension that you'd like that to be, it'll automatically raise or lower the wall sweeps or move them from side to side accordingly. So depending on exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish, you can click and just drag them. Or if you have an object that's close to it, like in the case of this being close down to the floor, we can click, say we want it to be at the 5-foot mark, and then adjust it accordingly. So by manipulating them using either your dimensioning tools or by just clicking and dragging, you can create any kind of pattern, any kind of condition on your walls that you require. When you manually place a wall sweep on a wall, sometimes that wall sweep will get embedded into the wall, which isn't necessarily where you want that wall sweep to be actually located at in relationship to the wall. More than likely, you want the wall sweep to either be on the surface of the wall or out toward the outer edge of the wall, not sort of in the middle of the wall itself. Also, sometimes you'll have two different wall sweeps. They'll come together at a corner, and not quite clean up just correctly. And what I'd like to do is go through the process of how to clean up both of those conditions. Here on the view cube over on the right-hand side of my screen, I'm going to click on the arrow, which will bring us around to the front elevation, and then spin the wheel of the mouse. What we're looking at here is a wall and another wall coming together at a 90-degree angle. Now, let's manually add two wall sweeps that aren't exactly parallel to one another. Come up here to the Architecture tab, select on Wall, then click on Wall Sweep. Scroll down, then somewhere in this area, click to place your first sweep. Hit the Escape key to get out of the command. Do the same thing. Go to Wall, Wall Sweep. Now, this is important. Don't have them automatically line up with one another, because they will clean up with one another if they automatically are lining up with one another on placement. Just place one right about here. Get out of the command. And now I'd like to take a look at this a little bit closer and at a little bit different angle. To accomplish that, I'll hold down the Shift key on the keyboard, as well as the wheel of my mouse, and then gently move the mouse. Once we're at an angle, spin the wheel of the mouse to zoom in and take a look at the two boards. Let's first get these boards away from the center of the walls. To accomplish that task, click on either one of the wall sweeps, and then for the offset from wall, let's adjust its offset to be 3/4 of an inch. Then click on Apply. Notice how it's now been pulled away from the wall? Do the same thing with your other sweep. Now that they've both been pulled away, let's line both of them up. Click on one of them, click on the little blue dot, and you'll see that if you click on the little blue dot, you can either pull this board out or pull it back. Instead of just pulling it forward or pulling it back, what I'd really like to do is select on the board and then just manually pull it down until it looks like they're just about lined up with one another. Then let go. Now we can see that both of these boards are right there. Now one option is what I just showed you. Click on that dot and then just pull it out until you get to the end of the other board until they're lined up with one another. Another option is to pull this board back and then select on Modify Returns. You'll see a blue face on the end of that board. But what we can tell Revit to do is to take that end of the board and then rotate it around so that it's not just facing this direction, but it spins itself around, it is facing the other board. So that would be modifying the return, and then we could type in whatever angle that it is that we need in order for it to meet the other board. In this case, the two walls that they're attached to are at a 90-degree angle from one another. So a 90-degree angle is correct. But if they'd been at 45, so you would type in a 45-degree angle. Next, click where it has this blue surface. You may need to do it toward the edge of that surface, but click right around the edge of that blue surface. One of the things that it's now done is that it's now come around and now it's going around the corner. If we hit escape a couple times on the keyboard and then click, we'll notice that there's a blue dot right here at the end. Well, that blue dot before was pulling out in this direction, right? But now, if we try to pull in the blue dot, you'll notice that it goes around the edge. Now, unfortunately, though, because it's going around the edge, it means that we can no longer just click and just pull it over in this direction. We would need to make other adjustments in order to be able to accomplish that. So now, though, we have two blue dots, one which indicates the end of the wall, or where it's connecting at the end of the wall, and the other which is the overall length of the board. We can now click this blue dot, pull it out to here, in order to get these boards to both come out and sort of meet up at the same spot. To get them accurate, we really need to go into a plan view and then pull them until it's at the exact right length away from the wall so that they both line up with one another. Once this has occurred, You can then select on one of the boards, and then maybe it's just good the way that it is, but I like to clean these things up by coming up here to join, selecting on one, selecting on the other, and then start to clean up that extra material out between the two boards. Now, the reason why you're still seeing some lines here is because there is still a slight difference in the height in between each of these. But if we would go into elevation views, so we could then use the move command and then move them so that they're aligned with one another. And that's the same thing inside of the plane view as well. We could go into a plane view and then make sure that each of these boards were aligned with one another inside of a plane view. But if we zoom out, we can now see that now these two boards are coming together and it's now wrapping around the corner so that it looks right inside of an elevation view. There are two different ways that you can add openings to a wall in the Revit environment. One way would be to place either a door or a window, which was nothing but an opening object, and then place it directly into the wall. The second way is to use an actual opening object and then modify the opening object to match that area in the wall that you want your opening to be at. Let's start by placing a door opening object into one of our walls. Underneath the Architecture tab, go to Door. And you'll notice that on the Type Selector list, we currently only have one kind of door available to us. We really need to have a door opening object available to us. So to load that family in, we need to come up here to Load Family. Then in your list of families, go to your doors. And one of the doors that you should have available to you will be a door opening. And click on Open. Once the door opening family has been loaded, I do want to point out that you can always select on Edit Type and then choose a different size for that door opening. Currently, this door is 3 foot by 7 foot, but you could always duplicate that, give it the correct size, and then give it the correct size down here to have a door opening that's exactly the size that you need it to be. Click on OK. And I just want to add a door opening to this south wall. Now, the exact location of it, I don't really care, but I do want to point out that you can place this door opening anywhere along the wall that you want. Then click in order to place the door opening. To see the door opening a little bit better, let's hit the Escape key a couple times on the keyboard, then come up to the default 3D view button. Click on that button, and now we can see that we have that door opening, creating the opening there in the wall. Now, another thing that we could do is just draw in an actual opening object directly inside of our model. I'll start by drawing an opening object on this wall, then come in and do another opening object, which is an opening right in between each one of these wood members that are on the wall. One of the ways that I usually consider an incorrect way to use an opening object is to go into the floor plan view and then double click on that level that you want to draw the opening on. Then you'll oftentimes see people look for their opening object, which will be a wall opening. And you can find that underneath the Architecture tab. And then in Plan View, they'll select on the wall, they'll click once, click twice, and then there will be the opening, and it will just be there somewhere on the wall. Now, the reason why I usually consider this to be an incorrect method is because it's extremely difficult to know the overall heights and widths and exactly where that opening is going to be located at when you're just clicking somewhere along the wall. In fact, if we take a look at what it is that we just created by clicking on the wall in the two spots, I'll select on the default 3D view again. We can see that there's an opening. We know how wide it was going to be. We know where it was going to start. So it's a good door opening, but it's not really good for an opening such as what we would need in between each one of these boards that are along the wall, which means we would then have to come back in and begin to readjust heights and all that kind of information. I usually like to start with either a section or an interior elevation if I'm going to be creating an opening inside of a wall like we have over here on the right-hand side. So go back to the floor plan view, and we can see that we currently have an elevation 1-B, which is pointing toward this back wall. Well, if you click to highlight on this arrow part, and then double click on it really quick, it'll automatically take you to that interior elevation view. Now, if we decide to use the opening object, we can. Underneath the Architecture tab, go to Opening Wall. Select on the wall that you want this opening to be a part of. And now you can either click exactly where you want it to start at, or just come close. And then click again. Now you can always modify it after the fact by hitting the Escape key to get out of the command, then selecting on the opening object. Then you can either just click on the little arrows and then just pull them to exactly where it is that you want them to be at. Or what I typically do is use the Align command. With an object selected, you can then pick on Align, pick this line, then pick the line of the opening. And then do that all the way around. Click and click, then click and click. Now we have an opening just inside of this framework of those boards that were along that wall. Now, if we go back into a 3D view, and I just hit Escape a couple of times to get out of the command, come back to the default 3D view, you can now see that we have an opening which is framed perfectly by those boards.